Shimin Says on the G1 podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am GP.
Hi, I'm Cathy.
And we are Shimin Says on the G1 podcast. Actually screwed up our intro like 3 times there, and I just hit my hat on...
Cannot believe.
I shouldn't be wearing this hat anyway.
Okay.
Okay, so before we get started on this edition of Shimin Says, I want you to, if you haven't already, take a second to subscribe to us on YouTube, on SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasts. We are here every other week to give you the news for free. And we do a great job. Cathy does a great job. I just kind of am the sounding board.
Oh.
Okay.
Flattered, thanks.
You ready to get started, Cathy?
Sure. The
top news stories.
Top news story for today. It's actually a question. Is banning cell phones in schools a human rights violation or not? And so, GP, you and I will take on a pro or con side and delve more into this issue, kind of arguing against each other.
Okay, well,
let's have a debate.
Which side are you on?
So I don't believe that this is a human rights violation, so I'll take on a cons side.
Okay, then I am by default the pro. Why don't you give us a synopsis of the situation, if you would please?
Sure. So one of the recent decisions that the National Human Rights Commission of Korea, which was established back in 2001, has made is that students should be permitted to use their cell phones in schools, and banning it would be a violation of human rights. So right now, most Korean middle school and high schools are taking on this policy where they confiscate students' phones in the morning and returning it back when students are done with school activities. And the commission has actually ruled this as a violation of human rights because these 2 articles in the Korean Constitution, Article 10, Article 18.
What is Article 10? I know what Article 18 is.
Yeah, Article 10 is regarding dignity, pursuit of happiness. So it actually says that all citizens are assured of human worth and dignity and have the right to pursue their happiness.
Okay, and Article 18, the secrecy of correspondence. It's pretty self-explanatory.
Mm-hmm.
Your private message to one person is your private message to one person. The government or whoever else should not be able to seize those correspondences, right? Okay, so why? Why all of a sudden is this an issue, a human rights issue?
Let's first look at the ruling, though. I personally, because I take on a con side, think that this was a far-fetched ruling from the National Human Rights Commission. They said that, quote, without students' devices, students can't communicate with their parents or friends. And this time of being isolated from their close group of people, it gets too long if all of their devices are taken away by their teachers. Clearly violates one's rights to pursue happiness.
Well, I guess Korean students are at school much longer than I was, right? So
that's true. Yeah.
Still seems kind of far-fetched. I know which side I'm really on, but I'll play your devil's advocate here. Okay,
you're good at that. So this is a long-running debate, not only in Korea but outside Korea as well. And there has been so many studies that have been done in UK, US, and Japan. So maybe we'll also talk about those while we're debating.
Okay, so I'm assuming that I'm going to be laying out the pro side first.
Yes, do that.
Okay. Yeah, well, since you commanded me, so I will. All right, here we have the ban is seen as an excessive regulation, right? That just means that it's just going too far. So in my head, that means that, where are you going to stop? You're taking away smartphones, but what are you going to do next? You're going to take away the internet, right? You're going to take away books. It's just access to other things, right? Moving on to my next little bullet point here. The fact that students are distracted may not be solely caused by smartphones. Who says that teachers are doing a good job teaching? Who says that kids just don't have shorter attention spans nowadays anyway? You can't trace this to smartphone use. There's too many students in one class, especially in high schools, right?
Or even, I'm actually playing devil's advocate here.
Against yourself?
Yeah. Some people even criticize the contents or the level of education that teachers are giving out to these students. Ouch. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Some are just not challenged. Too many students in one class. There's not enough teachers, not enough manpower. The hours are too long. Your marginal productivity decreases the more hours you are in school, the more hours I spend editing audio or whatnot, right? I feel for them. It takes after the ineffective one-way teaching model where teachers just dictate to their students, right?
And just give information.
They just give information, are expected to, I guess, for lack of a better word, take it.
Yeah.
Instead of confiscating them, another bullet point here, that my third one is, instead of confiscating them, we should teach students and train them how to properly use their smartphones, just like the internet. It's a tool, just like you teach people how to drive a car. We should be doing that instead of just taking it away when they distract themselves. And my last point here, students are entitled to human rights, right? They're a minority group, and minority groups are often underrepresented, so they should be looked after as well. Boom, laid it down.
Yeah.
Your turn, Cathy. What you got?
Same. I'll do that. So I believe that the ban is not a human rights violation, which is different from this. So this debate is different from asking simply a question: is banning smartphones in schools a right thing to do or not? Right. So we were talking about actually this topic in link to a human rights issue. So no, I don't think that the ban itself is a human rights violation for these reasons. First, smartphones are now the curse of the new modern days, as a lot of people say, and they really have introduced a new form of violence into the classroom environment.
Got an example for me?
So students are actually using smartphones to cyberbully other peers or pupils, or even video up teachers' skirts. This has been not just in Korea but reported in other countries as well, and also uploading materials from the classrooms without teachers' approvals, which is actually directly connecting right back to the Article 18 as well.
And I know that I was a teacher, right? If I knew that my kids always had their smartphones on them at all times, I might behave differently. I might not feel the freedom to teach.
Exactly.
Right, but I understand you'll be getting that to in a little bit. Okay, let's move on to your next con there.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, not just in Korea but outside Korea, a lot of stats show that a number of students or the level of students' addiction to these smartphones is getting worse and worse, and students are even missing classes to play with their phones, and that's not right. And that clearly shows that students are not having the full controllability.
Yeah, they can't get enough of this stuff, right? When I was a kid, I would play my Nintendo 64 literally until the skin on my thumbs peeled off.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
Now, 9.1% of elementary school students are addicted to smartphones.
What is that percentage again?
9.1.
9.1. So 1 out of every 10. Average class size about 25, 26 students when I was an elementary school teacher. So that's 2.5, almost. Yeah, about 2 students in the classroom would be addicted. I believe that for sure.
Yeah, and in size, that's about 38,000 students. And imagine how that number will go up as they get older.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So that's a huge concern for all of us. And other countries like US also ban smartphones in order to prevent their students from distractions and disruptions that these smartphones bring to them, and also to protect teachers' rights to teach, as you mentioned briefly.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because we have a constitution there, and the pursuit of happiness is a big thing, but we're not taking it in this direction, at least not yet. Before we move on to the heart of the rights conflict and hearing what the netizens have to say, which is what this entire Shimin Says podcast is about, what Koreans have to say, I do recall something, I think it's called like ojangpum, or that incident. I don't know what that means, but that's what it's called. And if you were in Korea back in, I think 2010, when that teacher, that video of that teacher literally beating the crap out of his student,
elementary school student,
went viral. It was violent.
Yeah.
It's
hard to watch.
Right. So I'm just saying, that was a case in which having your smartphone out was a good thing. Otherwise, he would have just gotten away with it.
That might have been hidden.
Yeah, that might have been hidden. And you know what? He might have gone to attack other students. So there's another one for the pro list. I guess surveillance and accountability. Hopefully one that we just kind of iron out of society and we don't use cell phones to patrol.
Sure.
Let's move on to the rights conflict.
Okay, so since this issue is slightly different from asking just a simple question, is banning smartphones in schools is the right thing to do or not? It's actually a human rights violation case. So we're talking about human rights of students, which is oftentimes very difficult and tricky to gauge because they're minors. But also we're talking about the rights of the teachers to teach and educate their students. And on the other side, we also have the rights of other students to learn, because obviously the disruption level these smartphones usage is bringing to a specific
this level of distraction is almost contagious, right? So this is an interesting case in my mind. It's almost like a triangle in which you have opposing conflict. You have like all these different factors that normally wouldn't come into play against each other. You have the interest of the student who, assuming, some of them want to have smartphone access because it's a tool. Some of them want it to play games. And then you have the teacher's right to teach, which goes into a different direction. And then you have interest of the other students working against factions within that, right?
Exactly.
Normally in education when I was growing up, it was kind of all in the same direction. That is not the world we live in anymore.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I feel bad for teachers living or doing their jobs in a mobile era. And another point to add to that, it's a really good stat. So in UK, the Daily Mail did a study on low achieving student group and high achieving student group on the impacts of smartphone usage on them. And it actually turned out that the low achieving students had been affected by, influenced by smartphones usage more so than the other group. And when the school had banned the smartphone usage, their test score went up by 14%. Which is a significant
and that's in
increase.
The lowest performing group that needs that largest boost, right?
Exactly. And so I think what this finding is indicating is that students with better controllability, so high achieving students are obviously more ambitious and they want to concentrate
probably
in class.
Already more disciplined.
Yeah, more disciplined. I think discipline is the right word. They know how to use smartphones for the good of it, not to abuse their time or playing games and looking up on other materials that they shouldn't be looking at. And so I think this is another really good factor that backs up my argument that, it may be not about banning the smartphone usage completely, but students have to have that full controllability to have the freedom. And until that point, adults and teachers should be focused more on developing a right education program to, bring their awareness and adequate and discipline up to that level. But before that, I think it should be banned, and it's actually not a violation of human rights.
Okay, so that's where we're concluded, I'm assuming, right? Let's hear about what the Koreans have to say on their comments in various news publications and websites. What are they telling us? How do they feel?
I've got some really good mix of very, very different opinions by netizens. So one comment is human rights violation. That's nonsense. Are people allowed to take their phones to the military too? Such a thing is the minimum regulation that the government or school or the other governing bodies should impose for the greater good of the whole. The other netizen also commented, what's the human rights violation for?
Yeah, I would say that if in Korea, people were allowed to bring their cell phones into basic training. I have a friend who went off to basic training in the military. Shout out to you, Jesse. Good luck over there, buddy. But if they were doing that, we'd all be screwed, right? Okay, so those are two comments that are very much one way.
Right.
What else you got?
The other one... So this person said, why make a decent device and not allow these students to make use of it? Instead of banning it, students should be taught to understand why they should study and concentrate in classrooms. So kind of like one of the
idealistic
pros, evidence or factors that you brought up. And the other comment here is, it says, did we ever have human rights in this country, let alone for the teenagers? This type of regulation is to win votes from the parents' generation.
So that was very, very political right there.
It is. Yeah.
Okay, wow. Those are all the comments we have for on this topic. Is banning smartphones a human rights violation, right? Okay, we are moving into our second and final topic for this edition of Shimin Says. Cathy, what do you got for us?
Okay, so second topic for today is prenups in Korea, which is slowly increasing with the recent anti-adultery law being repealed. In Korea, there's such a thing called prenuptial agreement under the Korean law.
Let's rewind a second, actually, because this anti-adultery thing, some of our newer expats might not be familiar. This was a law. So for a long time in Korean history, the modern government, this was a punishable offense. Cheating on your spouse was a punishable offense.
For 61 years or something.
Pretty much the entire length of the existence of the Republic of Korea. And when was it repealed?
2015 February.
Okay, so just
pretty recent.
Yeah, for about 18 months, people have been able to cheat without the fear of legal repercussions.
Okay.
Right. And I remember that when this was passed, websites like Ashley Madison had a huge explosion in membership. But that's okay, let's move on.
Right? Yes.
Yeah.
So to give a kind of a background story of this issue. So in Korea, there is a thing called prenuptial agreement under the Korean law. The Korean Civil Act Article 829, which is interesting because it actually doesn't have any legal binding, but is as merely a civil code because Korea is a civil law jurisdiction.
Okay, so just for my own ignorance here, there's the civil code, which is different from like criminal law.
Yeah, because civil law, which is basically a civil code that doesn't have any legal binding, is clearly different from criminal law.
Okay, so if I break a law, like I steal something, it's immediately punishable.
Sure.
As where there seems to be kind of like some legal wiggle room here.
Yeah. So that's the difference between how Americans or like other countries may think of prenups as opposed to how the Koreans are thinking of prenups, because it's more of a broader concept to include all the principles and rules between two people.
Actually, I find that this approach towards contracts in Korea is it is everywhere, not just in prenups, but in your employment contract. Everything, even though it's on paper and it's supposed to be legally binding, and you sign something, and to you as a foreigner, it is legally binding. You know, there's always some ambiguity, some sort of interpretation.
Yeah.
And this ambiguity seems to extend towards prenups. I don't like ambiguity in terms of contracts. But
That's
apparently,
a good point.
Right.
So if a prenuptial agreement signing couple, let's say they end up divorcing, they would still have to go through a litigation or a lawsuit.
Okay, so it's not an automatic, this is what we agreed on, this is what you get, this is what I get. And it's like, oh, this is kind of what we agreed on. And we have this prenup document as evidence, but
it
hey,
is as an evidence.
let's lawyer up and still duke it out in court.
Yeah. Okay,
What is the point?
You would still need a lawyer to
Yeah.
make this one too.
Okay.
So yeah, really, what is the point? But
Yeah.
we're gonna get to why. You know, some people say it's actually a healthy thing, although yeah. Not only that, in 2015 February there was that anti-adultery law
repeal.
which, that has been repealed, but also now 1 out of 5 couples that couple are remarrying after divorce, and so all these things kind of combined, this idea is becoming more and more popular.
Okay.
There's an interesting survey results by Duo. By the way, you told me earlier that you did an interesting documentary with them, so you met the CEO.
I recorded with the CEO, and that documentary didn't ever go through because we didn't get the material that we needed. But I met the CEO, and she's a wonderful lady. She's younger than I thought she would be. She's, I think, in her early 40s, and extremely intelligent.
What is Duo?
Duo is a marriage corporation.
Like singles.com.
Like kind of like even more like oh man, they take all your information. It's like over 60 questions, right? And there's people in front of like these Excel sheets with all this compatibility stuff, and then they pitch you to another person, and that person agrees to, and you go on a date, right? And there's all these processes to filter out your background, to do background checks to make sure that you're not trying to scam someone or just trying to go on blind dates, or simply just going to satisfy your parents and like a token of, oh hey, I'm actually trying to get married. So they're very, very thorough. I asked this woman, with online dating platforms, people don't need duo as much, and also in the future I don't envision people getting married as much because there's a steady downwards decline in marriage in Korea. And then I asked her, so how is your business going to survive? And she looked at me, and something that we're talking about now, she said, but people are also getting divorced more. And I said,
wow.
Yeah, doesn't that, like, what does that mean for you? And she goes,
it's a new opportunity for
she
business.
Said, that means repeat business. And I was just blown away at how savvy she was. Kudos to you, Mrs. CEO.
I mean, just born to be a businesswoman.
Yeah, cha-ching.
Okay. So this is an interesting survey by that specific company, by Duo. And so 1,000 single men and women were the respondents of the survey. And 63% of single women agreed that prenups are necessary, whereas 55% of single men agreed that prenups are not necessary. So we see a very distinctively different response here between two genders. And then 20% actually said they don't want to even think about doing a prenup before even starting out a marriage.
Because it kind of colors
it's just a
matrimony, right?
It's a different, it kind of damages your mood.
Yeah,
you're kind of all starting out in this like rosy feelings, and like why throw a...
And you want to be able to trust someone, right? That you want to have good faith in them.
Yeah. And this was actually, this topic rose up or kind of swept the surface on web recently because Samsung's Ivujin, so she's a Samsung royal families, and she's a CEO.
Royal family, I like that. Okay.
Yeah, she is. And then she actually married this person who's not part of the royal family or of another, big conglomerate. He was just
a commoner, a peasant. If you're listening to this, Mr. Man that married in, I apologize, but you're probably not. So
and his last name was Im, so there was even an acronym for him,
or nickname, right?
Nickname for him with this word, Imderella.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like Tinderella.
But they after 17 years of marriage, they ended up divorcing each other, and so people were talking about whether or not they have had this prenups signed up before, because stats show that the wealthier you get, or the wealthier you are, or the older you are, you tend to find more security in signing prenups or things alike.
And I want to point out that 17 years, that might not be a coincidental number, because actually a lot of couples stay together literally as long as it takes for their kids to move out into college, because they really strongly believe that a child should grow up with strong family values. And then once that child has kind of become an adult, move on to college, is studying abroad, has gone on to the military or whatnot, they've decided that, the reason that we were together is no longer here, for and it doesn't it doesn't bind us. So who knows? I don't know if that applies to this particular situation. I did just want to point that out.
Okay, that's a really good point and relevant point, because 46 from the same survey, 46% of the respondents said that if they divorce their spouse, it would be for their own happiness.
Absolutely right.
And do we want to look at some netizens' replies?
Yes, let's absolutely hear. I'm so curious how Koreans feel about prenup.
It's not that serious. So one netizen here says, regarding this very distinctive response that a single woman and single man has shown towards this survey, he said it's a very unfair country, and there's a huge gap for gender difference.
Well, I mean, there's people like lately this summer in Korea, genders are completely firing off at each other.
Yeah, and the other comment is quite funny. He says, just don't marry.
Just
I feel bad.
What does it say here in Korean? Can you read it to me in Korean?
결혼하지 마라.
결혼하지 마라. 안타깝다.
하지 마라. Yeah.
Every one of my friends who's like just a little bit older is
Yeah.
like they just say that to me. I'm like,
Really?
you're so salty and cynical, right?
Yeah, cynical. I don't know.
Very few of them say anything at all. But
Really?
when they do, sometimes it's a little bit salty.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to believe in the institution, I suppose,
Yeah.
but not as a finish line. You know, it's just a continuation of relationship. We're going on into my personal philosophy. Let's not go there. Let's hear from the netizens. What else are they saying?
That's it.
That's it. Okay. All right. Let's move on forward then to a little bit. I understand also, in addition to these, what the netizens are saying, you know, this is a reflection of what's going on in regular media. So social media is one thing, but regular media as well, right?
Yeah. So there have been already at least 3 dramas that had storylines involving this topic, prenups.
Ooh.
Are now popularly coming up in like TV series and dramas like this as an item.
Okay.
And yeah, it's just becoming a little bit more popular among general public as well.
Okay, so it's something people are talking about. You know, I think it's something you should talk about. You should at least be on the same page if you're gonna get one. If you're not gonna get one, that's what we got for you guys this week, right, Cathy?
Yes.
All right. If you enjoyed this edition of Shimin Says, please do give us the G1 podcast a like on Facebook, subscribe, iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, anywhere you get your podcasts, right? Before we wrap this up, we're talking prenups. Cathy, would you get one?
No.
Okay, that was a strong,
I'm an
swift
idealist, and I want to believe in romantic.
Right now,
marriage.
if I was gonna get married tomorrow, I am not worth anything, so I don't think it's really necessary. Like if the divorce happens, I'm pretty sure I'm coming out better. Like if we had a prenup.
Yeah, but it's not only about financial splits.
Of course,
Yeah.
right? I don't have kids either right now, so yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Let's awkwardly wrap this
Okay.
up.
See you next time.
Yeah. For Shimin Says on the G1 podcast, I'm GP.
I'm Cathy.
We'll catch you guys next time.
Bye.
이번 역은 사당역입니다. 내리실 건 왼쪽입니다.